holidays and the new year are supposed to feel refreshing, but for many people, they quietly amplify everything that feels uncertain. Like career questions, identity shifts, burnout that no longer fits under the rug. And this season often brings forced pauses, like time off, family conversations, reflection we did not plan for. And suddenly, the life we were running on autopilot does not feel as solid as it once did. Well, listeners, today's conversation is not about pretending transitions are easy. It is about how mindfulness can play a practical role when life changes faster than our sense of direction, especially when clarity feels far away. Welcome back, listeners, to the Mindful Living Podcast. I am Sana, and first of all, a happy new year to every one of you. And today we are talking about how mindfulness supports people through major life and career transitions, not in a spiritual bypassing way, but in a grounded, behavioral, day to day way. And my guest today, well, she's a transformational coach who helps people break the patterns that keep them stuck in business and daily life. Her work focuses on behavior, clarity, and mindset, and her style is direct. No time wasted, practical shifts that lead fast, real progress. And what I appreciate about her approach is, listeners, that mindfulness is not treated as a passive awareness. It is treated as a tool for momentum. And I really hope that this conversation, it's an honest one. It would include moments where mindfulness might feel uncomfortable or even inconvenient. But then let's begin. And listeners, meet my incredible guest, Debbie Longo. Debbie, welcome to the Mindful Living. And as always, it is really an honor to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Super, super. Okay, let's try to Debbie, understand mindfulness during identity shifts, because this is something that many people would be going through, like major transitions, maybe leaving a career or stepping into something very new, losing a role or outgrowing a version of themselves. And identity loss, it often hits harder than the change itself. The very thought of it itself is really, really difficult sometimes. So from your work, how does mindfulness actually help someone stay emotionally regulated when their old identity no longer shifts?
Right. So thank you for the question. It was very good.
Mhm.
I want to I usually, when I speak about different topics and answer questions, I like to give a lot of examples
Yeah.
because that kind of helps people to, get a visual in their mind, about what I'm saying, especially if they don't understand what I'm saying or they've never done it before, which
Yeah.
most of the time is the case. Um, and the bottom line is that the main thing is I want to get rid of the negativity. Now, this comes in all different shapes and sizes, all different forms, right? So there's a saying that the mind controls the body, okay? And
Mhm.
the mind controls everything. It controls my thinking, my action, my body, how things happen, maybe what happened in my future or my daily life. And this doesn't have anything to do with working or home because when I change my behavior, it doesn't matter where I am or what I'm doing or who I'm with because it's an internal change and everything starts from the inside out. And when I do these types of things to grow myself and my body and evolve and all of this, when I do this from the inside out, that is truly the best way that I could possibly do it because I could do a lot of things that come from the outside in, right? I can read books, right? Self-help books. Okay. I
Mhm.
could ask for advice from people that I like. and, I really wanna be like them, like a mentor or something, but that's not gonna help me truly make internal change, right? So, there's a lot of examples like, if I'm going to the store, do I view all of the people running around and, acting busy and, grabbing their stuff so they could get out of the store really quickly? Do I view that as a negative thing where that's gonna, make me do that and then I'm gonna leave the store with a lot of anxiety? Or do I view that as a positive thing where, people are running around, and I'll go slow, right? And then that'll leave me more time in the store, you know, whatever you think. So, these are all perceptions. Everything is relative, right? So it depends on how I think and what my view is, right? And what my experiences are.
Mm, mm. I think it's it this distinction itself it's so important because especially during transitions, I think panic can quietly drive behavior for the fact that it can also drive our decisions as well, just because of that panic or anxiety. Um, and many people say that I know I am not my job, but emotionally they still feel like untethered. So, is there any practical, like one practical awareness shift that could help people stop spiraling when their identity loss shows up? A quick pause for you listening listeners. If this conversation is already giving you language for what you feel inside, or if you feel it's helping you see your patterns with a little less shame, hit follow on the Mindful Living. And if someone in your life keeps saying, I am stuck, or I do not know what is wrong with me, share this episode with them after you are done. All right, back to it.
Yeah, so that was a good question, thank you. What I get from a lot of experiences that I've had from working with people and even my own experience, right? One event triggers another, okay? And if that's a negative event, then that's gonna trigger me to give a negative response, right? Like anxiety or, fear or something, but I don't want that. So I need to train my brain in a way that is not going to it's not going to affect that. So I see something negative or something I don't want or something I don't like, right? Like we're talking about when the people run out of the store, my instinct is to get anxiety, but I need to know how to stop that before it happens. And then guess what happens after that? The next time a similar situation will happen. Doesn't necessarily have to be the same situation, right? I might come home and my children are yelling and screaming and running around and going crazy, right? So the first thing I want to do is have anger, is get really upset and start yelling and screaming back at them. Stop yelling, but I wanna learn how to stop that before it starts, okay? And when I can do that, the trick is when I can do that, then it won't continue. So I will automatically block that out or when the next person does something negative or something I don't like or whatever the situation is, you could relate it to your own situation, all the listeners, right? I want to automatically I will automatically block that out and then spiral right into a positive thing, a positive behavior, right? So
Mm,
there's a lot of things that they can do, right? But they can be aware, that these things are happening. And sometimes that's a long process, but for some people, they've been aware for a very long time, and they don't know what to do. They just keep doing it.
mm, yep, yeah, yeah. It's kind of, we want to become proactive instead of reactive, but it's kind of embedded into our DNA. Um, and I think the next question is something that, in fact, I can chalk out so many examples from my own life as well, because I genuinely, I really sometimes I'm very fearful of uncertainty. Sometimes I keep on thinking about a situation which may not happen. It may happen, I don't know, but then I think that is something where mindfulness it really gets tested. So when outcomes are unclear, people, either they freeze or they overwork. They try to take everything either in control or they just give up on it. So how do you help people that, with whom you work stay grounded without forcing optimism or pretending that uncertainty is comfortable?
Right, thank you for the question. You know what they could do is
Hmm.
they could say over and over, first of all, that I accept the situation the way that it is. That's the first thing. And the
Mm.
second thing is they could say, I live in today. Okay. I'm not, if, why am I uncertain? Well, uncertainty or fear or whatever is the reaction, right? Whether it's a feeling or whatever, it's still a reaction. But what I want to know is why am I like that? So now I have to go one step deeper. Then I might say, well, why is that? And then we might go one step deeper, something like that, right? And then when that happens, right, we can go to these little ideas or little sayings, right? Or like a mantra or something like that, right? And I just gave you 2, right? So if I say these things over and over, what am I doing now is I'm training my brain not to have that anxiety, right? Not to have that uncertainty. But the point with there's a big secret to that. And the secret is that I have to do it every single time I have that feeling or any feeling that's associated with that. And the one time I don't do it, right, that opens the door for it for me to continue with that behavior that I don't want. Okay. But if I do it every single time, because if I don't do it every time, then my brain gets confused. So now we're saying, okay, I don't have this uncertainty. Instead of doing that, now we're going to do this, right? Now we're going to say, I accept it the way that it is. So you're literally telling your mind, okay, we're not going to do this anymore. Now we're going to do this. And obviously, it'd be something negative and something positive, whatever, right? Right? Because we don't want to we don't want to teach negativity, right? you know.
Uh,
So when I do that, I'm telling my brain. So now I'm learning how to control my brain instead of my mind, instead of my mind controlling me. And that's
mm,
what I want to learn. That's the crux of it anyway.
yeah, yeah, like a training. That is actually an interesting, very interesting exercise, because um, I really kind of feel bad or kind of disheartened because mindfulness it's often marketed as slowing down, but then the exercise that you mentioned it's more on sharpening decision making under pressure, and definitely it sounds less like surrender and more like a strategic clarity, whether it's business or it's your personal life or any aspect of your life. I think it really really holds a lot of relevance in there. um Another aspect of your work, you also focus on burnout, and it often doesn't only come from workload, but it also comes from misalignment or emotional suppression. And like I have had conversations with so many guests, where they have shared their journeys where it got kind of manifested physically. So how does mindfulness help, people catch burnout before it becomes exhaustion?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. Like we were talking about, right? I want to know it before it gets to the point of burnout, right?
Yeah.
Because that's going to be the last step. And when that happens, then it's going to be really difficult because now I have to go back and say, how did this become this way? Then they're going to tell me. Then I have to go back again, right? And then answer that question. Then I have to go back again. So now, just to try to get to the root of it, right? I'm going back like, like 3 or 4 steps, which could be like years of this type of behavior, right? So
Mm.
that's the point where I don't want to get to. But all the ways that we spoke about, right? And also, um, who is like, I want to focus on me, right? On my inner work, right? But
Mm.
who is partly responsible for my behavior and the way that I'm acting? Now, one
Mm.
thing I might want to do is change my environment,
Yeah.
but I still wanna look at myself, okay? So, that doesn't necessarily mean, I have to quit, and and get another job, right? I
Mm.
might ask maybe if there are people that are around me that are, getting very excited, or have, like, a very, aggressive attitude, and I'm not like that, and they're bothering me. I'm sitting next to them at work, and they're bothering me. Maybe I could ask to change my seat to somebody sitting next to somebody who's a little calmer, different things like that, right? So
Mm.
it's going to affect the outer and the inner, but ultimately this is a way to fix it right away, right? A little bit. But ultimately it's going to be my inner work, right? All this stuff that we're talking about, right? Then it
Mm.
doesn't matter who I'm sitting next to. But that's a process, right? But if I get to the point of burnout, then it's a lot there to unpack, which is fine. I mean, I've done it hundreds and hundreds of times,
Mm.
because a lot of people don't know until that happens. So it's kind of like a little bit ball of wax type thing.
Mm. Mm. You mentioned about environment, and I also feel that, sometimes there are some external factors that, can play quite an important role in there. Like, um, sometimes, people would not feel themselves in their home, but they would feel themselves maybe in a community where they are networking or connecting with like-minded people. Sometimes, they may feel like I always, feel myself when I'm at home, watching something of my own, eating a good homemade nutritious dinner. um, some people would find themselves, natural in their own environment where they're sitting outside with their friends or colleagues or, doing something. Everybody has their own kind of, um, like a net of safety in there. Um, and also kind of a contradictory angle here that I would like to bring in. Like some people argue, Debbie, that mindfulness it makes people overly reflective and slower to act. Once again, kind of connecting it with the slowness. How it is marketed, especially when we are in all that fast moving dynamics in the world right now. So, how do you respond to this idea?
Yes, thank you for the question.
Hmm.
Um, to me, that's part of perception, but if it's not, right? If it's really, happening in that way, okay, where, more than one person, right, you know, sees that, okay, or a bunch of people do, all right, then I always want to be, if there's a few answers to your question, okay? I always want to be, a lot of time, well, it really depends, but a lot of times to me, from my experience, it's better to be slower than to be faster. Because if
Mhm.
I'm doing something, sometimes it takes time for me to think. And maybe I might have to think twice,
Yep.
right? Before I say something or do something. And most of the time, that's a better thing. But if we learn how to focus on what our first thought is, And this is another thing I teach, okay? To know what your first thought is. So your first thought and your second thought are two different things, right? But a lot of people don't know, so they'll dismiss the first thought, or they don't want it, or they don't like it, even though that's what they should be doing, because the first thought is the best thought. Okay. But they don't like it. So then they say, oh, whatever. And then they go to the second thought. Okay. So that's why these are all different things, that I teach and I train people to help them with just everything. The way that they think, which is going to change everything. It's going to change their whole entire life. And also, that might help other people too. Because if I have a family or I'm at work, then they see me the way that I was, and now I get coaching or training or whatever, and now I'm a different person. So then they say, "Wow, I'm still the way that I am, and you're not like that anymore." How does that happen? So there's a lot of different things going on. I mean, I could go on, but there's a lot of different things going on here. That's just, a few examples of, what we're talking about here.
It depends on situations to situations. And I think that's where our maturity lies at, uh, sometimes in order to get clarity you need to slow down, but then at the same time it doesn't mean that you have to always kind of keep on slowing down and take every decision. Sometimes we have to be fast, but it depends on situation to situation. So before we wrap up, Devi, of course, if listeners, they would like to, if you can give one grounding practice that could help people return to intention when everything is feeling like unstable, any particular practice that you also follow and you suggest other your clients as well.
I would say to think about what you want to do in your future and what your goals are. And are you in a place that you're happy with? Do you really want to make a change? Are you aware of that? Can you have the willingness to do that? And if you don't, can you create the willingness? Is your life a ball of insanity? Okay. And
Mhm.
are you okay with that? Right. So these are just some of the things that, we could do. And also, what about the people around us? How are they affected by us, by our behavior? Because if we create the negativity or the abuse or the fear or, negativity, whatever, right? Then those people are gonna respond that way too. So, when I do this work, I do a specific thing tailored to that person. We have, strategy calls and then I give them a plan, an outline about what they're gonna do and their goals and how they're gonna get to here and here, and that's what we talk about. So it's tailor made to that individual. There's nothing that's a blanket thing here. We could talk about a lot of different topics, right? But different people have different needs and wants and experiences.
Exactly. It's never one size fits all. And it's about responding wisely to what's actually happening right now. So that makes sense, Debbie. And if listeners, they would like to further dive deep on this with you, they would like to share their thoughts with you, connect with you, what would be the easiest way?
Right. So I have a website, lifeinbloomny.net. So that's LIFEINBLOOMNY for New York .net. And then I'm also on LinkedIn. So you could punch in Debbie Longo and it'll come right up. So, and then, if you could put the contact information too, I would appreciate that.
Awesome. Awesome. Listeners, what I'm going to do for you is have all the links in the show notes. So Check out lifeinbloomny.net. Connect with Debbie on LinkedIn. Feel free to share your thoughts and try to seek more wisdom from her. And as we wrap up this conversation on mindfulness, listeners, you know what I have realized is how practical it becomes when mindfulness is stripped of performance and perfection. Because transitions are not clean. Identity loss, yes, it is uncomfortable, and uncertainty is destabilizing. But then awareness gives us a pause, not to escape reality or accountability, but to choose our next move more intentionally. So, if there's one takeaway today, listeners, it is this: you don't need to have the whole path figured out. You just need enough awareness to take the next honest step without burning yourself out or betraying your values. Debbie, thank you once again for such a reflective conversation on the mindful living. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Superb. And listeners, thank you for tuning into this episode on the mindful living. Until next time, stay present, stay grounded, and stay intentional, and keep tuning into the Mindful Living podcast. This is your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.